Good morning. Welcome to everyone to the first budget work session for the fiscal 24 upcoming year. Mr. Ware, turn it over to you from here.
That's fine. Commissioners, commissioners, you'll see your. We got it. Let's give it, you'll see your budget books. They flip horizontally. A little bit different look than maybe in different years, in previous years, but we think this is going to make it a whole lot easier to go through the budget. We think it'll provide you with more information and give you a clearer picture of what's being asked for by each department, as well as the changes that each department's made. So if you open your books to the first tab, the area transportation CATS department and the road dollars, you'll see your first page is pretty much a summary. That summary gives you a broken down or a general picture of what both the revenues and the expenditures are. First thing I'll say about CATS is CATS with our CAT system, uses 0 county tax dollars to support itself. So their funding is intergovernmental, special revenues, permits and fees, sales and services, investment earnings, and you'll see fund balance appropriated. The fund balances appropriated is from their fund balance, CATS's fund balance, from money that they built up over the years. It's not from county tax dollar fund balance. So as you can see this year, there's a $963 decrease in their budget line items. If you flip to the next page, you can see a little bit more in detail of what those intergovernmental revenues are associated with.
Just a question, because I don't know.
Okay.
ROAP, what is that?
Rural Operating Assistance Program. And that is a grant that we apply for that brings in funding to the county for citizens of the county to be able to ride transportation at either a very low cost or no cost at all. And it includes elderly and disabled, and it includes rural general public funds, which we refer to as RGP.
What is the work first?
That is through the Department of Social Services, and that's if they have anybody that's on the Work First program that we maybe are taking to ECC or to do volunteer hours, you know, whatever they're kind of needing to give them to do in order to meet the criteria of their program. But we provide very little service over the last few years for them because I know the program just does not have the members it once did have.
So if you flip over to the next page, you'll see the revenues. The revenues continue. And I think what you see here is a lot of the special revenues declining, and those special revenues were basically associated with ARPA funding.
Because we will not receive any of that this time. We the previous year we got CARES, and then this year, the year that we're in now, we've got ARPA dollars. We went after every dollar that we could get through the public transportation side. That was completely separate from what the county received. these were specifically through NCBOC that we got these funds. And they helped offset some of our operations because they knew a lot of us were still struggling, after COVID.
So if you flip to the next page, you see the expenditures begin. And this is just a broken down line item view of all the expenditures that make up the expenditure categories for our capital area transportation system.
Mr. Miller.
Yeah.
So, on the prior page, where it says fiscal year 23 adopted, $838,049.
Yes, sir.
Do you have the figure for what it was a year prior to that without the influx of all the COVID money and the other special funding that's given to the department? What was their normal budget before all that was infused?
It really is gonna vary with us because it depends on if we have capital, like for vehicles and stuff, because the state gives us 90%. They pay 90% of all of our buses that we get. And this year, we, in this fiscal year, and also upcoming FY24, we're not eligible for any buses because you have to meet the 100,000 mile criteria. And we have not met that because all of our buses are newer. But unfortunately, in FY25, we're going to have several that come together, but that's a state requirement that they have to meet a threshold in July. Like say, I'm working on FY25 for the state now. And in July, they will look, see where my miles are, and that will determine for FY25, which buses will get replaced.
Okay, let me see. Maybe I didn't.
So that number is $616,406.
But it does vary with the capital because that gives us extra revenue that we report in when I do this, because they're going to send us 90% of the reimbursement.
So if I'm looking at the figures right, basically from the prior year without all the infusion of federal funds, you got 616,000, and what they're asking for this year is 596. Is it that simple, or am I missing something?
I mean, it's that simple, but capital does affect that.
Yeah,
Because I would include that as a reimbursement on my end, like I do the 5311 admin, that would be considered a reimbursement from the state. And that would make the revenues more on my end and make the expenditure more. So it all depends on the capital that we're requesting each year as well. Because like if I had requested a bus, that's going to be an additional, that could be an additional like $52,000 that I would have in revenues. And I would show probably like close to 60,000 on the expenditure side.
one thing the board probably needs to be aware of, not necessarily for this year's budget, but for next year's budget, is Melissa will need several additional buses. And the price of those buses have just got doubled.
They have.
We will get a decent amount of funding next year from the state to cover those expenses, but she'll have to use more of her fund balance as a match to be able to receive that. And here again, that's CAT's fund balance that they've been able to accumulate over the years. This does not include any Caswell County taxpayer dollars. This department does not use Caswell County taxpayer dollars.
And what did you say the ratio of the match is that the state gives us to buy these vehicles? What percentage?
90%.
90.
And then we have to come up with 10% match, but unfortunately with these vehicles doubling, it's almost like we're gonna now have to come up with double than what we used to have to come up with. But this year we will not be affected because I'm not asking for any of this one. But I know in FY25 it'll be few that we will be replacing.
Say that the vehicle prices have doubled. Are there any alternatives to get something different?
We're already buying off the state contract, and with them paying 90%, they go out for RFP. They have certain specs that have to be met. So we have to buy within the selection that we have, and all of them vary the same price. It's just which vendor you want to, go with, whether it be Palmetto or Carolina Thomas. But the pricing is pretty much the same. It's just with the way everything gets went up. the buses have just really doubled, and they said they hope that they've even captured close to what it will be.
Thank you.
So are there any other questions about CATS? If not, we'll move on to court facilities.
One question I have. How many full-time employees?
We have, I'm gonna just give you a breakdown of our staff. We have 15 staff members. We have one director, which is me. We have an administrative assistant, a transportation coordinator, 3 full-time drivers, and 9 part-time drivers.
Add those numbers together, go ahead.
We have 15 staff in all.
15 is that you're bringing it down.
Yeah, and that's
15
the
is
breakdown,
down.
but
Okay.
15 in all.
Fully staffed.
Huh?
Fully staffed.
Yes,
Fully staffed.
well, right now we are, trying not to jinx it, but we're probably will look at bringing on another part-timer because just of how, with the way Medicaid is now with the brokers and stuff, we have very little control over trying to set days where we go places and the times that we go, it's almost like you're at their mercy now. So we're doing a lot more kind of back and forth and, you know, in more days of the week than we typically did to some of the outside areas. So we are possibly looking at bringing in another part-timer. But the good thing about part-time, there's no benefits to pay.
One last question I have, on that $616,416 a day was previous year.
Right.
So basically, if you took that figure and you added this CARES Act money, that's how you got up to 838,049. That's
So if there's no other questions about CATS, we'll move on to the court facility fund. I see that we have our clerk report with us today, John Satterfield. You can see it's pretty much outlined exactly the way the last department was. You got a summary for your revenues and expenditures. And after your summary, you see a little bit more in-depth breakdown of your revenues and expenditures.
Mr. Satterfield, what is other services, and it has a 984% increase in the request from 2,500 to 27,100?
That is for technology upgrades related to upgraded business systems that the North Carolina Administrative Office of the Courts is requiring of all 100 counties. The system is called Odyssey, and it is bringing the courts into what I would say the 21st century, in that we're going to have electronic filings and going paperless. Albeit, we have 3 counties that are actually live on it right now. And there are major problems with Tyler Technologies, who writes this program. And we have been told that Mecklenburg County has suspended their pilot program because of problems. However, that is not or shouldn't affect the train that's in motion, because I think once the errors are fixed, CASL will certainly go electronically for all filings. The technology upgrades are the county's obligation for putting in low voltage cabling systems into the walls of the courthouse, upgrading some of the electrical components, things that are fixed, okay? But the AOC provides the hardware like computers, TV screens, things like that But the materials that will be permanently put into the courthouse is what we're asking for the commissioners to approve for this fiscal year. They asked for it last year. Brian and I had lengthy conversations and said it is not budgeted. We are not going to move forward with this until this week.
Is it wise to move forward with it now based upon the experience that they're having in Mecklenburg? I mean, it's a big county. You think they'd be able to nail it all out, get it streamlined where we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel? We had a pattern.
Well, it's not. If you think about the county's obligation, what we're talking about is cable drops within the walls because we will need more data ports throughout the entire building. We have already morphed into most employees having laptops. Part of this component that we're asking for the county is for everything to be completely wireless. So there will be a benefit to the general public and to county employees who actually work in the building too. So the entire building, will have Wi-Fi ports throughout so that we've got coverage there. As to whether I believe it to be wise, I would say yes, because it is coming. I do believe that they will resolve whatever software issues they have. But I would not want to delay it for another year because part of this is also expanding our ability to do remote hearings. Obviously, just like your commissioner meetings are live streamed now, we have, based upon the pandemic and how it changed many people's operations, we're having more and more remote hearings rather than physical hearings in the courthouse. There may be parties that are in the far reaches of the state that remote in for a 5-minute hearing. I would agree that let them remote in rather than driving 4 hours for 5 minutes for a court proceeding.
Mentioned that this is being mandated by the state.
Yes.
So this is what equates to an unfunded mandate if they're not providing the money to carry through with.
That is correct. However, statutorily, all 100 counties have an obligation to fund adequate court facilities for the state courts. And that is providing for the facility itself and the ability to support the state's business systems. Again, the county's obligation will be for its fixed assets that are in the county's building. Again, wiring for electricity, data ports, things like that, but not the actual hardware. That is owned by the state. The hardware and software.
This is a stupid question, but you're talking about putting this in this courthouse. Okay.
Well, our court facility at 139.
Okay.
But that is where you see the significant increase, the $24,600. That would be a new line item to the court facility fee fund.
But this is not a recurring thing like a.
It is not. It is not a recurring line.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Glad to entertain any other questions that you have.
Looks like the revenues, permits, and fees are up and transfer ins.
That revenues are up. We've got to be mindful that in the previous fiscal year, we were right in the middle of a pandemic. Albeit the courts were operating, it's just different. But now we're back into some sense of normalcy, and so we've had increased revenues. But it may be helpful for those that are new to the board to understand revenues for the court facilities. Going back to the 1970s, when North Carolina became a unified court system, okay, we no longer had individual county courts. Okay, we all came under one umbrella. It created the administrative office of courts and kind of standardized our courts throughout the state. The legislature wrote in the law where a portion of all court costs that are received by my office or any clerk's office goes into a special fund. And once a month, we send a treasurer's check to the county finance office for all of the county fees that we've collected through our court costs. For example, you come to criminal district court cost might be $183, the base cost. $10 of that goes towards the county to help support its statutory obligation to provide an adequate court facility. So we through our court costs, we help pay for utilities and things like that, you know, what's in our budget. But however, with the increased cost of things and plus two situations like we've got now for upgrades and needed for our new business systems, there will be a need for ad valorem tax dollars to help supplement that because there's just not enough revenue through standard court fees to sustain that budget.
Commissioners, are there any additional questions on court facility funds? Not, we'll move on to section 8 housing authority. Commissioners, much like CATS, section 8 housing authority is one of the departments within the county that uses no Castle County tax dollars to support its operations. You do see fund balance appropriated, that's fund balance held by section 8, specifically designated for section 8 through their past operations. So you can see just a general breakdown summary of revenues and expenditures. Turn the page, you see a little bit more in-depth breakdown for the revenues. Turn the page again, and you see a little bit more in-depth breakdown for the expenditures.
These revenues all federal.
Federal and state. Unfortunately, our section 8 housing director was not able to be with us the day of this meeting. She had a prior commitment. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
On page 11.
Okay.
Fund administration. Goes up $11,000. The next page, I see that the benefits total went up as well. Explain to me how that works with them being third employees. Is that county's obligation on that to provide the cost of their benefits?
No, once again, they're self-sufficient. They use no county tax dollars to support their operations or their benefits or salaries, so on and so forth.
I see on page 12, down near the bottom, on maintenance and repair of vehicles, $1,000. Are those Those are not county vehicles, I take it,
They are,
Right. but there's not county funds used for those.
that's right. They are leased by the county, but they do, they are expensed to the, section 8.
How many do they have assigned to section 8?
I think they have one. And it's for section 8, as you know, they help residents with, housing. And before that housing can be used by section 8 and during the course of the year, an inspector has to go out periodically and inspect those houses to make sure it's up to code, that it meets the requirements for section 8 housing. That's what the vehicle's used for.
And all of these benefit increases are just related to with salaries increase percentages. All for those to go up as well. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask that question one more time.
When the benefits, the increase in benefits, FICA, retirement health.
Yes.
That's because of salaries.
Yes, you're correct. When the salaries increase, the benefits increase.
One question I got, and I guess you did hit on page 12 under supplies and expenses. When you, looks like it's asking for the same thing as it was in the previous year,
Right.
but that changed due to what these gas prices.
Well, the gas prices tend to fluctuate quite a bit. They fluctuated last year. I know they're going up again, but they tend to ebb and flow. So I think it'll be a pretty steady yes. All right, if there's no other questions, we can move on to family services. Here again, commissioners, you see the summary, the revenues and expenditures. And unlike the other two departments we looked at today, family services does require county match. Their county match this year will be $20,000. But their budget, as you can see, you're looking at a partial budget for family services. They have two different types of grants that they deal with. One set of grants runs on a fiscal year. One set of grants runs on a calendar year. If I'm correct, and Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're looking at the grants that run on a fiscal year, right?
And an annual basis.
Annual basis on a fiscal year.
Regular fiscal year.
Okay. So, and the other information will be provided later on as part of a larger budget package.
What was the, under supplies and expenses? 23 is 16,499, and then Weston is 3,207. What caused that drop?
We have our family services director with us today, and also assistant county manager, Aisha Gwynn.
Could you repeat that question for me?
On the 2023 adopted budget, under the supplies and expenses of 16,499, and on the 24 department requested is 3,270. I was just asking what would cause that dramatic drop?
We have other grants that are not listed, and so they cover
more supplies than is provided on that paper. So that's why there's that difference between 23 and 24.
Yeah, you'll see, commissioners, if you jump over to page 16 and look at supplies and expenses, you'll see many of those supplies and expense lines are gone altogether. With a $4,000 increase, a $2,500 increase, $2,800 increase, so on and so forth. So some of those lines are gone altogether.
Yes.
Decrease, yes, I'm sorry.
Page 15. Governance crime.
Yes.
Could you explain that to me?
That is a crime from the Department of Public Safety for Victims of Crime Act. It's a federal fund that administers grant funding to states and is administered by the Governor's Crime Commission to the Department of Public Safety. I'm sorry. Okay. And so we have been getting that grant probably since 2014, as far as I can go back. However, the amounts have decreased each year as the amount that's gone into the fund has decreased. So it is a multi-year grant. So, and it runs not the fiscal year, it runs from October through September 30th. It falls a federal fiscal year. And we have another federal grant that falls in that same category as well.
What does it get with?
It helps with salaries, it helps with direct assistance to clients, survivors of domestic violence, but for victims of crime. So it can help with relocation assistance, moving, court costs, medical expenses, transportation, provisions, so as simple as providing like somebody who may have lost income because they left an abusive relationship or are a victim of crime, diapers for their young children or pull-ups or something like that.
Under these, the listing of other services where you had the reduction. Flip on back to page 17 where it's got it broken down. Are these services that you just no longer provide, or they like transportation, job placement, rental assistance, medical assistance?
We do provide those. What happened, the grantors, they all have moved from an individual like line item for bill assistance, relocation, that type of stuff, to one line item that is easier for us to call client services DV services. And so those lines now fold into client services DV only. So it's like, instead of one line, instead of multiple line items doing the same thing, we just have one line item. And that's the move that the grantors have moved to, all the grantors, that line. And it helps us in finance and family services with administration of the grants.
I see the client services DV listed. This year was 15,186, and the request for next year is 14,281, which is just a reduction of $905. Those other funds that are being reduced are not included in that DV section there. So what I'm asking is, are these services that you will no longer provide? Because you still have the 14,281 under the DV, whatever DV stands for.
Domestic violence.
Domestic violence, okay.
So I think the answer to that question is no, those services will still be provided. They'll be provided through different grants that maybe you're not looking at.
That's correct. We received,
Included in this portion.
we received another multi-year that is quite significant, that did not require a match, that is strictly for client services, domestic violence.
And the dues and subscriptions,
Yes.
what's the reduction in that related to?
We, during the pandemic, we adopted DocuSign, the have paperwork signed digitally by our clients in case they didn't feel comfortable coming into the office. We have since ceased that subscription. So that was a significant reduction.
Page 16, the salaries.
Yeah.
From 87 to 113 or 29% increase. Is that? How did that figure in? Was it additional staff into that or is that just?
Yes, we grew from 5 to 6. And so that was additional staffing for that.
And that was 100% grant funded.
All this is grant funded. We're split kind of percentage wise between different grants, like for example, some might may be funded by 4 different grants, some might be funded by 2 grants. And if we don't get the grants, they understand that they do not have a position with the county. But it's all grant funded.
Mr. Miller, backing up something you said when we started on this section, you say the county match was $20,000 for that coming fiscal year,
That's correct.
regardless of all these other numbers. The
That's
county will be asked to contribute 20.
That's correct. So the county's going to be asked to contribute $20,000. If that number decreases, then we won't get the grants that are included in what you're looking at now, or the other grants to come that require a match. If we don't have enough money to provide the match, then we don't receive the grants.
What was the county asked to contribute for the current fiscal year?
Well, it's kind of a story because the grants waived the match fees during the pandemic. So we normally have to contribute maybe 8% to 15% prior to the pandemic, so up to fiscal year 2019-20. This year, because we are now exiting the public health emergency, they are now no longer waiving the match fees. And so there are only 2 grants out of maybe 6 that we received, and some of them are not listed, that require a match. And that is Council for Women and Youth Involvement, Domestic Violence, and Family Violence Prevention Service Act. And they request or require a county match. And it came out to 19,872, and so I just rounded it to 20.
May have missed it. What are the amounts on the grants?
51,856.72 for domestic violence, Council for Women and Youth Involvement, Domestic Violence, or DV. 17,500 for Council for Women Youth Involvement, Marriage License Fees, MLF. Council for Women and Youth Involvement, there's a lot of them. Divorce filing fees, 19,000. There's several more. Let me know when you're ready.
Good.
All right, Family Violence Prevention Service Act, or we call FIPSA. It is 47,500. Governor's Crime Commission, not GCC, $52,077.28. FIPSA ARPA, $149,853.36. And then some of these are not listed because they are not, they're multi-year. And then there's Human Trafficking Commission, the multi-year, $86,950. And we received a $15,000 grant from the Community Foundation, the Dan River region, that we were able to use for the match for 2030. I believe that might be all of them.
Thank you.
Very good.
You go, girl, it's impressive.
I look at them every day, so yeah.
I'll tell you that Aisha does a great job managing those grants, but she is those grants require so much reporting. We sign off on expenditure reports and payroll reports on a monthly basis. So because there's so many of them, she's working with those grants from day one of the month to the end of the month. She really does a good job, but they require a huge level of reporting.
So basically, on these numbers, just bypass a $20,000 match.
That's correct. There, and if you'll remember, I think 2 meetings ago or 3 meetings ago, I told you about some other grants that were going to be applied for through Family Services. they're looking at doing a new strategic plan this year. They're kind of looking at rebranding themselves, creating a new mission for family services. And funny enough, Aisha and I had this conversation yesterday. I received a phone call saying there was a family that appeared to be in need at one of our local businesses. So I called Aisha and spoke with her about it briefly, asked her to send someone up to visit the family and see if there was any way that we could help them. And they did. But during that conversation, Aisha was explaining to me that the individual had, or one of the individuals had to have some linkage to domestic violence for them to be able to assist them in the way that they probably needed assistance. So as we went through that process, we spoke a little bit more in depth about just the name, Family Services. If you've got an organization named Family Services, it doesn't really provide that linkage to, well, you can only get assistance if there's domestic violence involved. So they are going through that. Aisha is also exploring reopening a domestic violence shelter here in Castle. One of the grants was an up to $3 million grant that provide multi-years of service, but it also would allow them to open a purchase a domestic violence shelter and open a domestic violence shelter. We used to have a domestic violence shelter. We no longer have that shelter here in the county, but that's something that we will speak about a little bit more in depth as we go through the budgeting process. So just want to make everybody aware of those issues.
Does county have any involvement with Crossroads?
No, they are a private agency. We have a memorandum of understanding or agreement with them where we can, we have a coordinated response team or multidisciplinary response team, excuse me. We have that, but the county itself, they may have some allocation to Crossroads. I'm not sure, but I know they are a private agency. But they are the sexual assault victim service provider, and we are designated as the domestic violence service provider.
I'd like to see all the cooperation we can have with that group. They're good out.
Definitely.
Commissioners, are there any more questions on family services, revenues or expenditures? If not, we'll move on to the library. Here again, page 1, you'll see a summary of the revenues and expenditures.
Okay, question number 1.
Okay.
Salaries increased from 245 to 325, a 32% increase. Benefits are up 42%.
So yeah, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, we are requesting the addition of a position for the library. This would be an entry level position. We feel like we can better serve the citizens of Caswell County with services and materials and perform more outreach, which is one of the goals of the library, with an additional staff person. So we have factored in a entry level position of a salary, starting salary of $30,000, which is, from my understanding, the base minimum for the county, correct? And we are also asking for raises for the staff who are already here. And as far as the increase with the prices and materials, that reflects the increase with inflation, the prices of goods and materials and services that we are currently using for the library.
What will this new position do?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. This is a position, this would be a low level, or I shouldn't say low level, entry level circulation position. Currently, we have employed, we have, aside from myself, 4 full-time people. And each person has a designated job in which they are doing library programming, collection development. We're trying to do outreach into the community. And we need somebody full-time to work the CERT desk, what I call front of house staff. This would be somebody when you come in or your family members come in, they need help printing, using the computers, copying, shelving books, anything else that the library needs. Also filling in as needed with programs, programming, outreach. This is the person, currently, we do not have anybody in this role. We have a couple of pages who are high school students, and they are on a 1 year or 1 year term contract, and that money, their salary, or I should say their pay is actually coming out of state funds. The previous director arranged for them to have positions through state funding. And so when their term is up, that's it. And so we will not, in other words, what we have right now to do those kinds of duties, they're all temporary people. And a full-time circulation person would allow us to better serve and provide more opportunities for the citizens with programming, outreach, and also classes that I see are much needed in this community.
You keep saying outreach. What is outreach?
I'm glad you asked that. Outreach. I want to work with the schools. I also want to do some mobile library services in the county. I have already been approached by people in the county about providing books and materials to people who cannot make it to the library, maybe shut-ins, homebound. Also some mobile spots within the county where we could take maybe the existing van or SUV that belongs to the library and go out on a regular basis and drop off books and other materials to people when they cannot make it to the library. Because currently this brick and mortar building is the only way people can get library services right now. They have to actually come to us. So we would like to take the library into the county. And I'm also working with schools, partnering with them to provide some programming to the students, because students can't always get to the library either. My name,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Haley Walters. I'm the new director.
Couple questions I have. One is, you fully staffed?
Right now, we are not.
How many positions are you not fully staffed?
We are going to be hiring 2 people. So we have 2 positions open that we need to fill.
You have 2 open.
Yes.
Second question. On this increase, what percentage are you asking for?
Which one are you referring to? The salary?
On the salary.
We are asking for a 10% increase. This is to go in line with cost of living adjustments.
So,
Yes, sir.
and maybe I've missed this during the conversation. How many full-time employees do you have, or capable of having, when all positions are filled?
This will be, including myself, it would be 7.
7 total.
7 total.
When you hire, that's including the vacant positions, correct?
That is correct. That would be the position they were asking for. So total there would be, actually, we get the position asked for, there would then be a total of 8.
But you have 7 currently, correct?
Yes, we have 2 which are vacant. We are trying to, they have just been posted to be filled.
Okay, so the salary number that you're requesting at 325,440, that is for a total of 8 employees, correct?
Yes, and that number, I apologize, we were in a hurry to get this done. That number is actually incorrect because we did not have a chance to go back and check the math on all this. We just had to get this in. So that number is incorrect. I sent the updated sheet to Brian and Jennifer Hammock this morning.
What is that number?
That would be, again, please double check my math. This would be 339,441.05.
339,441.
Yes,
Okay, and the position that you're asking for has a starting salary of 30,000, correct?
yes.
So, commissioners, just as a note, several years ago or 2 years ago, the board decided that the minimum salary for any county employee to be $30,000. So the minimum, that's the minimum starting salary for our county employees.
But this person will get 10% raise on top of that, right off the bat, if we get what she's asking.
No, I don't believe so.
Because right now, you're two.
No.
You're two full-time.
No, they're hired in at the base rate.
Okay, here's my question. If, the new figure is 339,441. And the 23-year budget adopted amount was 245,638. You're asking for an increase of $93,803 and only $30,000 is for the new position. So $63,803 for the proposed raises. My math right?
That would be, I would have to check that, but that would be with the 10% for all positions.
That's a lot more than 10%.
I guess,
10%
please double check the math.
10% would be $24,563.80. That's at. You're looking at 27-28% there. My math going off. Mr. Dickerson's numbers.
Are you including the,
You take the new position off, you're down to 309,441. Starting that position at 30.
okay,
Difference between that is the 63,803. Yeah.
okay. We'll make sure and double check that math. We can revisit this the next time we come up.
And with those figures, that's gonna greatly impact that benefit amount as well. That's gonna change and go up drastically based upon that figure, correct?
That will,
Do you have, Jennifer, do you have a new spreadsheet? The two positions, you'd like to put, the two positions that you're picking right now, those both full-time positions.
Yes, yes.
The supplies and expenses. $44,000 reduction. What's that attributed to?
There were supplies and expenses. A lot of that got rearranged by finance and coded differently. So a lot of that was money. Some of this had already originally been set up previously under different codes by finance into categories that didn't really apply to us or our needs at the library. So a lot of that was just more of a matter of them recoding and renaming the supplies that we actually do use.
On page 20, you go 23 out to 30. Small tools and equipment, there was nothing in this year, than 3,500.
That refers back to finance moving some of this stuff around, that they recognize that some of these categories don't apply to us, and the money getting reallocated out of that into other categories.
Small tools went to supplies.
Library books, 26,840 on the 23 budget and 0 for 24.
That money all comes from the state. So we do not use any funds from the county to purchase the library books or periodicals.
Why would it have been listed in 23?
You would have to ask finance. They're the ones that put it there. So we were told we had to go with the format that they had set up.
Maybe it was mentioned, but please forgive me if I did not catch that. I was writing some notes. What percentage of the budget for the library is provided by state and grant, state funds or grants, and what percentage of it is paid for by the Caswell County taxpayer.
I do not know the actual percentages. I do know that the amount the state gives us, that is not a set in stone amount. There's no, the state, when they divvy out money to all the localities and all the libraries, they never say this is the exact amount. In other words, it's not a what's word, set in stone recurring amount. That varies from year to year, obviously depending on the budget that the state legislature passes. I know that it has varied anywhere between 82, I think last year was like 82,000-ish. This year, it could be around that much. It could be a little bit more, but it could also be that much, or it could even be less. All of that is a variable depending on what the state legislature allocates for library expenditure. So that's never a set in stone amount.
Okay, let me ask it a different way. Maybe it'd be simpler for me to understand it. How much money in what you're requesting for operating this year is coming from the county tax?
Basically, it would be the operating expenses. That would be including running the facility. That would be all the maintenance costs, utilities.
Commissioners, if you look at your revenue sheet, the first sheet, you can see your transfers in, transfers from general fund. That would be $438,063.
What page is that from?
It's page 19.
What's the figure again?
$438,063.
I can see that.
Page 19,
That's page 18.
on 19 also.
There's 138 on it.
It's down at the bottom of the page, transfers in.
You mean 448?
438 is what I have.
Transfers in 13806.
Think right.
2024 line item at the top.
So that's $438,000. That's the county money.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yes. Yeah, or you can flip to the one. So
Yeah, it does. Last question.
Yes, sir.
On those two positions, you said you were short, how long have they been vacant?
One lady, her last day was March, the end of March, March 29, whatever. She ended at the end of March, and the other one has just been posted. This was a position that had been left unfilled from when, there's been a lot of, from what I understand, there've been a lot of structural changes within, with a lot of people, personnel coming and going, and within that, positions did not get filled to begin with during the shuffling of employees within the library. And so we are going to try to fill that position, this open position as well. So that was one, I guess you could say, was existing, and now we're going to try to fill that one.
How long has it been open though?
It just opened yesterday.
Now, how long has it been?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Probably about 8 months.
8 months.
Probably.
Let me just be the one that states the obvious in the room. No one has been in that position for 8 months, and it's operated right on time, and we still have library open. Why are we talking about adding another position to your department? If you've been able to do it with 2 open.
We actually have not. We are struggling to fulfill all the services and programs that we feel like will better serve the citizens of Caswell County. And we are open 7 days a week. We are available to the public and
From Bill in 6 days.
I'm sorry, 6 days a week. We are trying to serve the citizens of Caswell County with educational resources, learning opportunities, entertainment, because we are kind of a main hub for the county as far as things to do and a place to learn. And we also provide a lot of internet services and computer classes and one-on-one help to the citizens of Caswell County. And when I mean one-on-one help, I mean one-on-one help. We can't just say, do this, here are my instructions. You do this, we have to actually kind of almost hold their hand and help people with things like job building, learning skills, learning how to use the computers. We're trying to help people improve their lives, improve the lives of their families. And hence, this is why I really want to reach out into the community beyond the library walls to reach as many people as we can with the services that we can offer.
So commissioners, and I'll just add to this, the position that's been open for about 8 months. It was a real technical position. They did a lot of technical things for the library. It's one of those positions that I couldn't necessarily fill. You really needed a library director to be able to fill those type of positions, that type of positions. We also wanted to wait until we were able to hire a new library director and let the new library director formulate things the way the internal structure of the library, the way they wanted to put that together. So that's one of the reasons that that position has remained open for as long as it has. There was a pretty large backlog of work associated with catching up, and there still is. I'll point out that Jackie's done a wonderful job keeping things in check and going, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So it's not like the position has it's not like the position that we haven't felt the loss of that position. I would say that we greatly felt the loss of that position. Jackie is now serving in the role that the person that left was working in. So we're actually looking to fill Jackie's role, right? With that position. And that position is adult pardon?
It's supposed to be adult services librarians.
Right, so they provide the adult programming here in the library.
I understand your explanation, I understand yours, but in the ever expanding world of government, providing more and more services and more benefits and more wish list items to improve the lives of our community, something gets lost. Because when we look at this and when you talk about a $93,000 increase, and you talk about increasing this other department, and you talk about increasing another one, pretty soon when you add all these together, the county taxpayer is going to get stuck with an increase. And at some point in time, we got to look at those county taxpayers and say, hey, they're struggling to put food on their family's tables. They need to take care of what's important in their lives. And every time we reach their hands in their pockets and say, you got to give us more, we're taking away from their quality of life. We're making it hard for them to provide for their children. And I'm very much so not trying to rake you over the coals, ma'am. You've never been in here before. But my job as a commissioner is to look at this budget and find out what is necessary, what's important, what we can do with what we have. We have limited funds. So don't feel like I'm singling you out. It'll be a recurring theme as we go through this process, nothing personal.
Well, we have the same goal. This is what the library is trying to do. We are trying to improve the lives of the people in this community. And I believe you get what you pay for. And people will see that, and they do see what a wonderful difference we make in their lives. And we see this all the time when people come in here requesting help, participating in one of our programs. And I think this is something that we can continue to provide and even take it to a higher level. We have so many things that we're being asked to do, both inside the library and outside the library, that we cannot do just because we don't have the necessary help or resources to do that. And it feels awful saying this to the citizens of Caswell County. These are agencies in Caswell County. I'm sorry, we cannot be there to do that. We cannot help you with that because we don't have the resources as well. And this is something that should benefit everybody. And the library is a community facility. We do not discriminate in who we allow in. Anybody can come in and use the library. It is called the public library for a reason. We never charge except for when people come to make copies on the copy machine and so forth. All of this stuff is free of charge to them. So they are getting entertainment for free. They're getting education for free when they come in for classes, and we teach them how to use computers, and we teach them other things when they come in and hear the speakers that we pay for, who present to them. All of this is something that they are getting. Yes, they're paying for it through their taxes, but it's still a whole lot cheaper than other means if they were to get this education, going to college, you know, or subscribing to some other type of service and so forth, entertainment. These authors, things that we have coming in, you know, these are things that I think really reflect well on this county. And I am really trying to work hard to make this a more, what's the one I'm looking for? More global center within the state and within the country. And I don't think that we should have the attitude that this is just a rural county. We shouldn't expect much. I totally disagree with that. I think that we can have all of that here, and I believe the people here see that and appreciate what we're offering, and we look forward to and embrace everything that we want to offer them.
Thank you.
That's had total support.
Are there any other questions?
Ms. Walters, I appreciate your zeal in protecting your department and trying to push your vision forward. I respect that. And I'll be as equally astute in my job as a commissioner to watch the expenses going forward, and we'll be on the same page.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, if you'll turn one more page or turn one more tab to page 22, you'll see special appropriation. These are the special appropriations that you make to 501c3s throughout the course of the year. The Animal Protection Society, the Cooperative Forestry Service, the Arts Council, the Caswell County Partnership for Children, the Historical Association, Caswell Historical Club, Horticulture Club, I'm sorry, Local Foods Council, Caswell Parish, and County Outreach Ministries.
What is that CGMBA in front of county outreach ministry?
That's the program that Mr. and Mrs. Robinson spoke to the board about.
And that's Cedar Grove.
Mhm.
That's a hot meals program.
Yeah, Cedar Grove Ministries.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Cedar.
How about the Historical Association increase of $7,000?
That is for gutters for the building.
The Historical Association received a grant for about $32,000 to have a lot of work done to the outside of the building. You can see a lot of that's going on now. They received that, I think, from the Community Foundation. So what they've asked the increase this year for is for gutters to help preserve the building and keep it up.
Does Yanceville contribute any money to that?
Not sure. Do you have that?
$4,000 for gutters on a house.
That's the quote. They wanted the, I think they need the larger round gutters rather than just the regular gutters.
I will reconsider that.
The $45,000 increase on the animal shelter.
Okay. We weren't paying anything on the animal shelter, did we? I was surprised when you said it, that's why I'm bringing it up.
No, we make an annual appropriation to them. But they're not a county department.
I thought that when you told me, you said that it was self-funded and it was a great deal, and I thought when you told me, I was like, how in the world are they doing that? So maybe I'm wrong. Misunderstood you. Okay.
They're asking for an additional 45,000 this year to provide more spay and neuter service and pet food assistance for the city of Castle. Also help cover the rising inflation and much needed repairs to the facility.
They give you the details as to what those repairs are needed.
They do not, it does say repairs and will be made for the safety of employees and animals.
A lot of it's fenced.
And kennel
Need
door.
shelter.
It's in the county owned building.
No. This is one of those departments, so commissioners, if we didn't have an organization providing that service for us, we would have to provide that service ourselves as a county department. Many counties do that. Luckily, we have the Animal Protection Society that's willing to provide that service for us. And we appropriate funding to that organization to help support those services.
We'd like to see what the maintenance that they're needing upgrade on, rather than just saying big money for upgrades. I would like to see what their needs for, their needs for kennels, or the rooms, just what the actual.
We have a full copy of their application rather than just a summary that we can make for you that gives the detail.
Is this included? I think that'd be a good idea, rather than just coming up with one large number.
Does this include the
I'll go next one.
salvage type vehicles?
No. Animal control is a county department. So when we pick up dogs or pick up whatever, we take it to the animal shelter and they house it.
The local foods council is asking for $166 increase. But it was only $2,500, still $2,500.
Yeah,
Why are they asking for that much more and what's it used for?
so the local foods councils, Jennifer, do you have their information? The local foods council has changed direction now, is I think headed up by the director of cooperative extension. And they're working in a little bit different manner than they have been before. They're trying to plan additional activities. If you remember, the county awarded them $35,000 grant in this past fiscal year, $35,000 grant. So when you add that $35,000 in to the $2,500 or the $1,500 award that they received, you actually see that it really should be more like it's $35,000 grant that they received, not a $3,500 grant they received. So the amount that they've requested is really about 1/10 of what we've given them in years or this previous year.
What they use their grant money for?
It was for to help set up the farmer's market and
Part of it, and they were working with different local food delivery companies and setting up programs with them to get more options for
Yeah.
residents that are on that are considered food insecure.
This Caswell Horticultural Club, is that the thing that has the thing yesterday.
Yes. And they, just for y'all's information, I don't know that everybody understands this. But they maintain the square for us, other than mowing. They put out the pine needles, and so that's what that money goes. It's actually goes to keep up, property owned by the county. I think they take care of some of the areas down around the sheriff's office. They all also maintain the arboretum behind the courthouse, and they take care of the courthouse grounds and the square.
What is the cooperative forestry service?
That's a forestry service out here on Fire Tower Road.
That's 501c3.
No,
Thought that's what all.
they're not all 501c3s. But it's an appropriation made to an agency outside of the county.
Okay.
So,
Didn't think they were a 501c3,
No.
but I did.
they're state agency.
Okay.
Yeah, that's who they are.
And this money is used for what? As far as they go.
For forestry related
Is
activities.
it salaries or anything included in this money?
I believe there is a salary increase.
Step over to the third page on that, it says $85,000, they're on $24.
Okay.
Salary increase also.
So that was like Steve Thompson, right?
Yes.
Yes,
He retired.
Yes, Brian Singleton,
We talked about it, Pops used to do.
when he retired. That's good.
That's almost the state pays a lot of it though, right?
Yes,
This is a reduction. Am I reading it?
that's correct. They, last year they had to purchase a vehicle.
Okay.
That's what that.
So we like a percentage of what of it, or
Would they have
I think it was half of the
I
vehicle.
think it was half, but this.
salaries though?
this
They
was-
have of salaries. I know some other policy.
It's a portion, but I don't know the percentage amount right off the top of my head. I can find out and get that.
And I'm new with this one. Getting back to the audit service. Do we pay anything of theirs as far as salary?
Say that one more time.
As far as audit service, it's listed under this special appropriation. We do anything as far as their salaries or anything like that?
No, we made, we don't pay any of their salaries. We give them, funding. We fund their, operations. And, that money goes to the state, and then the state allocates it the way they need to allocate. So for me to say that none of the money goes towards salaries, I can't necessarily tell you that. The state allocates those funds. But I would say if it says on their page that yes, salaries are one of the things that we're seeing an increase for. So I would say that, you know, some of that is allocated towards salary. But it's just like cooperative extension. We pay NC State pays cooperative extension.
Well, the risk of me sounding ignorant, which I will attest to right now. The way this budget process works, for the three of us in the room that are new to it. We're sitting here and we're looking at these numbers. But we will not make an approval or disapproval on these numbers.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely.
This is more or less for discussion purposes.
Yeah, that's for you. That's for you to be able to ask any questions you want to ask. For you to get a good understanding of what's contained in the budget. And, you know, later on in the process, y'all can have your deliberations about, I'll present my manager's recommendation after we've gone through some of this stuff. And, you'll be able to take the manager's recommendations and have some deliberation on, you know, what you want to do as a board.
So these are not your numbers.
No.
These are, okay, all right,
These are the department requests.
okay, got you.
This is what the departments have requested.
Yours may or may not mirror these requests, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Most of the time, I won't say there's significant changes, but there are changes one way or the other that I'll make to the budget.
Thank you.
Commissioners, unless you have other questions, that's all we had scheduled for today.
Okay. Just now, if you're not knowing, how long do we need to start preparing for on these days?
That's a good question, and it really depends on the amount of questions that you guys have. I would say no more than that we would go no more than 3 hours. I would say from my experience, any budget meeting or any meeting that goes longer than 3 hours becomes very, very unproductive.
We have divided them up this year pretty good.
Right, so
It shouldn't take all day.
I would imagine,
I'm sorry,
Melissa Miller, Deputy Finance Director.
I don't think I've ever been urgent.
I would imagine no more than 3 hours.
I know it's a hard shift for you to get here on here today. I think Frank. Is it gonna do one in the mornings like this?
We have some scheduled afternoon, evening that way.
There are.
Scheduled morning and some scheduled late.
They'll send out the schedule.
It was included in the last agenda package.
That sounds good. Good turn.
I think the next one is,
Next one's at 5:30. Set tight and I'll tell you exactly what.
All of those, right?
that's correct.
April 28th at 5:30. The following one is a field group, but it's at 9.
Thank y'all.
There were 2 9 o'clock that were back to back.
Yeah,
That's May 12th.
first two in May.
May 19th is 5:30.
Yeah, I'll email the schedule to the commissioners again.
With the library presentation. She said she had emailed you. on this.
And that'll be updated and we'll give you an updated sheet for your book. You just take that one out and put the new one in.
I will apologize if I had a lot of questions. I know how county government runs. I've been here for 30 years. First time I've sat in a budget section. I ask questions. That's the only way I learn.
Well, look, we want you to ask questions. That's the only way that you can make good informed decisions as commissioners. So we want you to understand. Commissioner, one more question that I do have before we go. Is, I know we have quite a few of these budget sessions that we want to move forward with. My question is, there's a lot of staff time involved in the technology and being able to Zoom these meetings. You can see today we've had 2 staff members here practically the entire time. So my question to you as a board is, do you want to continue to Zoom the budget sessions, or do you just want to stick to Zooming regular meetings?
Just Zoom the regular meetings. And no need to have to Zoom these discussions, I wouldn't think.
So today we've had 6 people on Zoom. How many are employees?
2, 3, 4,
5.
5 of which are county employees.
Since we're not making any official decisions.
The meeting's open, so they will come and sit and listen. I think if we're utilizing these 2 over here, and they could be actually working and do stuff that they need to be getting done throughout the day.
I don't have a problem with not Zooming.
Do a regular ones.
Okay, so moving forward, we will just Zoom the regular meetings. We will not do special meetings. Okay. That's all I have.
Thank y'all.
You want us to leave these, see?
No, you take them with you, so you can